Welcome to the Fantasy Value Hour presented by Local Football Flavor. In today's episode, we're going to break down all of the stuff that was last week. The love of the Aaron Rodgers fiasco continuing. The fact that Brady looks like, well, if his name wasn't Tom Brady, he wouldn't be starting right now. That's what he looked like, whether he wants to admit it or not. And all the other big things that happened in fantasy football and around the NFL this last weekend. Here we go. Welcome to Local Football Flavor, where we talk to local fans to get the real information of what's going on with their team. So, Bob, I want to start with the old man there, Brady. He's obviously the game I watched. I played Pittsburgh. So he was missing passes that Cooper Rush wasn't missing, that Zappy wasn't missing. And these are passes that are beyond NFL capable, beyond status quo accepted, and he's just missing. And I kid you not, if his name was not Tom Brady, he would not have finished that game. And he's going around and pouting and blaming everyone but himself, but he's not getting sacked because his line's the worst thing in the world. He's sitting on the ball. He's being inaccurate. He's doing all of the things you don't want from your starting quarterback. And this isn't the first week it's been happening. It's been happening for quite a while. So we're going to be interviewing a Saints guy here in the next couple of weeks to break down how he feels about Mr. Thomas Brady. But from what I saw last week and in tape henceforth, it ain't been pretty, Bob.
Well, I mean, here's the thing that for Tom Brady, you're absolutely right when you said in the introduction that if he were any other team's quarterback except for the Packers, he would probably be struggling to get on the field. I mean, granted, when you look at his stats over the last couple of weeks, he's been very pedestrian, and we've said a lot about pedestrian games. Kansas City, he had his best game. He had three touchdowns, and so
it was the night game. He shows up when people are watching.
This is not what we're used to out of Tom Brady, and I think that that's really the hard pill to swallow here. He has two games against some defenses that do have some problems in the next 2 weeks. So if you do have Tom Brady, you're probably going to start him those next 2 weeks as well.
Who's he playing?
He's playing Carolina and Baltimore.
Oh, that's a dumpster fire and Baltimore.
So you kind of have to play them there, and then they're playing the Rams and then Seattle, and then they're bye. And after the bye, they come out and they play Cleveland, New Orleans, San Francisco, Cincy, Arizona, Carolina, Atlanta. So
there's some offenses there. He's going to have to keep up with some people.
He has some games where he can get back on the level that he needs to be. I think for him, there is a skill drop-off in recent years, and also a mindset problem that he's having. So
that's a this year thing. The whole let's go to a wedding instead of practice.
Yeah,
that's concerning.
He's going through a lot of personal stuff, and I think he thought that maybe the team could be like a Super Bowl contender again this year. And they're still in the hunt for the Super Bowl. I mean, they're probably going to end up in the playoffs, but
the NFC has one team and then a lot of blood.
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably his last year. I will say that. Unless for some reason he has nothing left to play for other than money, and he has a lot of that already. So I mean, with his personal things and his mindset, when he's on the sidelines, berating his linemen, berating his players. When we look at Tom Brady from the past, he would do that, but he would also back it up on his end. And going like 25 for 40 against the putrid Steelers defense.
Missing 4 starting secondary members.
It is not okay, particularly even when they were starting, Josh Allen was tearing them apart. So
the end of the Bills game was the same defense that was out there. So he doesn't have the argument of I didn't know what they look like. Josh Allen ripped them apart in the second half after Minka got taken out for the injury. And like I said, that end unit that played against Brady was on tape. He already knew what it was. There's no surprise.
Here's the thing about Tampa, and this is the reason why I'm not giving up on Tom Brady just yet. If I have him, I'm not getting rid of him. I'm probably not even benching him unless I have a guy with a high ceiling and a high floor. So what I'm saying is he's putting up yards. He is completing, passes to players. They're finally at a point where Mike Evans, Godwin, Fournette,
They're all healthy. It's the first time all year all three of them are out there.
Players are healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing Tom Brady, he could probably get the ball rolling. It's not like he's not completing passes, which we could say
missing
about
easy ones though.
Which we could say about Aaron Rodgers, right? But when I look at his stats, and I'm just looking at week 6 and week 4, he put up 385 and 351 yards. And he's only gone under 200 once, and that was against New Orleans. We're thinking of a fantasy perspective from here. I mean, his first 2 weeks sucked. He put up 9 points and 8 points because of interceptions and fumbles. The last 4 weeks, 14, 24, 19, 13. He should have done better. Like when we were doing our DFS hour, we said, okay, Tom Brady, he's going to destroy them. It didn't happen. It was definitely a trap. And we were thinking that it could have been a trap if you were to play all those Tampa guys. But
Godwin would have worked out.
It seems to me that he can find his footing. He just has to get his mindset back. And I think that the personal things in his life right now and a lot of other things are kind of driving this kind of chaotic Tom Brady that we're seeing. A couple of touchdowns here and there. Like if they end up in the red zone and they start putting it in the red zone, he goes 2 touchdowns for 243 yards. All of a sudden we're looking at it and say, I'm not benching him. But it's the 1 touchdown games accompanied by the mistakes upon mistakes upon mistakes on the field that makes you don't want to trust him anymore. But I still would start him if I'm not confident to start a guy like Zappy or Mac Jones yet.
No, yeah, sure. So my point is that he is in a situation with a first-time head coach. There's no way that guy is benching Tom Brady. So whatever Tom is taking, this might be more of a real life thing. But to me, it is going to be very apparent that the one you're going to want from Tampa Bay, it's going to be Godwin. And the reason for that is of all of the assets they have in Tampa, he is the only after a catch guy. Evans can go up and get whatever, but he ain't going anywhere. He's going up, getting and coming down. Godwin can go and break some really big stuff after the catch. So if I'm looking at a team knowing that Brady doesn't have the accuracy he once had, that I want the guy who at least can catch the 7-yard slant and go, because that's what this offense is going to slowly pull itself into.
He's going to maximize your points. And if we're, a lot of people are on a buy low point now on Chris Godwin. And if I'm a Chris Godwin owner, unless the offer was really high, I'm not actually getting rid of Chris Godwin, because he hasn't. It's not a situation thing where it's not like we haven't seen in the past when these two players have been healthy. We've seen what happens. Godwin gets a lot of the yards. Mike Evans gets a lot of the touchdowns.
Exactly.
If Godwin can break it, what Tom Brady's relying on now to get yards, and why we haven't really been seeing it, was the health of Chris Godwin and the health of Mike Evans. The reason we're not seeing touchdowns is because Mike Evans hasn't been healthy enough to catch touchdowns. In the game that he did, he caught a lot of them. I think he caught 2 or 3, right, in that Kansas City game. So, like, when we're thinking about the Bucs, I think they're going to be okay, for lack of better options in the NFC. But Tom Brady to me is really not a problem, and I know his mistakes are a big problem, but he's the type of guy that is either gonna he doesn't want to lose, and so I mean nobody wants to lose,
obviously,
and he's a poor loser when he does lose.
Sure is.
But he is. I think next week is your perfect opportunity to start Tom Brady, actually, because he's going to be.
It's kind of like an all or nothing week for him. He's either going to return to Tommy or he's done.
Yeah.
Where
Rodgers mad and frustrated, Tom Brady gets more focused. And like I said, his yards were there. It's just the players didn't get in the end zone. And there's not. I mean, you can set them up in a position to get there, but if they don't get in, there's really not much.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get you. So on the notion of buy low, guys, and this was my draft strategy that I did. I have a league where I have not just Godwin, knowing that he was going to be bad the first couple of weeks because he was hurt. I also took Gallup, who the same concept, knew he was going to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I also took the stud of studs that got suspended. And if you do not have Hopkins in your league in Arizona, get him now, because we saw last week that a little blurb came across my phone late last night. Hollywood Brown's injury is not severe enough to get season-ending surgery.
But
on the one hand, good. On the other hand, we don't talk about season-ending surgery without a really big problem in terms of what your production is going to be.
Yeah, so here, Joe, here's the thing.
Hollywood was forced to rock. It's all going to Hopkins now.
Marquise Brown is out for 6 weeks. This coincides with DeAndre Hopkins. Nobody, I mean, the time to buy low on DeAndre Hopkins was 2 weeks ago.
Possibly, unless you drafted him and sat on him, which I did.
We all know that the time to buy him was about 2 weeks ago, maybe even a week ago, because bye weeks were starting. You probably could have traded a starter for DeAndre Hopkins. A lot of injuries have happened to the Seattle running backs, as we've thought, of the San Francisco running backs, as we thought, New England running backs. This ebb and flow of injuries that has been happening was your perfect opportunity to buy low on DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is no longer a buy low. But who is a buy low is Rondale Moore. What happens here is that with the injury to Brown and the comeback of Hopkins is going to get the majority of coverage and the majority of the target share. Absolutely 100%. That's not going to diminish at all. But Rondale Moore is definitely going to see an increase in snap count. And Rondale Moore is the guy that you can go out and probably get on waivers right now.
Yeah, but how's that going to work? If Hopkins is just basically doing a 1-for-1 replacement with Brown was getting all that same stuff.
Right, he was, but Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins are two different players.
Oh yeah, Hopkins big.
And I'm saying you can't buy low on Hopkins anymore. The price is what is going to be what the price is based off of his talent level. But you could probably still get Rondale Moore on waivers, or you can trade him for.
So you're saying because Rondale Moore is built more like Hollywood, that he's going to fill the void that Hopkins just physically cannot do.
Yeah, because I mean Hopkins is old, and he's not old, but like
he's old enough to take drugs.
Yeah, everybody's old enough, especially prescription medication
for the PEDs, baby. Let's talk about what he got suspended for.
But what we're looking at here, and I'm just in the absence here of October 2nd, October 9th, October 16th. These are Rondale Moore's stats: 3 for 11, 7 for 68, 6 for 49. Okay, if
there's some targets there, there's some volume there,
and we have Hopkins, Rondale Moore, Ertz. Who else is on the Cardinals here?
That's basically it.
I think I'm missing a
Connor's
guy.
Hurt.
Greg, that guy that starts with a D. His last name starts with a D, like not
Dortch
or something like that. I mean, if you're looking for a buy low candidate that's on the waiver wire, you can probably get him. Everybody's going to be gunning for him or Kenyon Drake this week if Drake and him are still available. And they're also probably going to be gunning for Bellinger too, because this is a week where Bellinger and Tunyon, week of bye weeks for some tight ends. So
Bellinger has been doing great, and we told you guys that on Local Football Flavor before the season started when we interviewed Rich LaMonica from the Giants, which still watch that interview. It is great. But yeah.
But speaking of buy low guys, there's a guy I'm trying to sell, and I can't sell him because he's
his name Rodgers.
That low. No, it's Aaron Jones.
Oh, dude, tell me about it. Oh.
So I have him in 2 leagues. One of the leagues is a 14-teamer. I had 14th pick, and I went with Jones and Najee. Obviously, I'm in last place.
Yeah, but that should be a stud. Those two are so disappointing on their own rights. Then you combine them. Oh.
It's so infuriating. It was a free league, so it was just with a bunch of people.
Still,
But I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And in that league too, I took Darnell Mooney, and it's a disaster. Some weeks I don't even get over 60 points.
is there even a Giants receiver worth touching at this point? I know they're 5-1.
Yeah, you go after Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson, like we talked with Rich about, he's the guy you want to own there. His target share is pretty good. And I just, I want to get back to this Aaron Jones thing, but I want to.
Sorry, my bad. Didn't mean to track you. We can ride the sad train that is the Aaron Jones.
Here's my team in this 14-team league that Herbert, Kirk, Dobbs, Mooney, Najee, Aaron Jones, George Kittle, Gibson, Nico Collins, DeAndre Hopkins, Pacheco, Drake, Disley, Westbrook Hines, Burke, Williams, and then Cade York and Minnesota's defense.
Yeah, you know how I feel with Pacheco. I really think he's the long-term stud, but he's not going to get the reps really till the playoffs. Playoffs.
What we're seeing here, in terms of just what's happening with teams recently, is everybody out there on fantasy football Twitter and TikTok and all this other stuff. Everybody makes buy low, sell high videos. Mm-hmm. And everybody that plays fantasy football watches the same stuff or usually the same stuff. And so the issue now is, which I'm noticing over the last 2 years, is it's very difficult to complete a trade because everybody is pretty much informed by the same set of statistics and the same set of things. And so it really comes down, and this is why in DFS lineups, I really kind of go with my gut decision, what I'm going to do, because I've gotten hosed so many times. Like I told everybody last year, trading for Derrick Henry the week before he got hurt, getting the wide receiver from the Raiders that ended up killing somebody in the car. And I gave up Adams and Hill because they were stinking up the joint, really not really doing too well at the beginning of the season there. So it's like everybody's getting the same information. So buy low, sell high is definitely a misnomer, because buy low guys, people, especially if they're studs or used to be studs, are going to be harder to sell, like Aaron Jones, because you don't want to give them up for pennies on the dollar, but you can't really afford to have them on your roster anymore because they make these bad decisions. But also you don't want to have, FOMO here, fear of missing out, because you're like, okay, if I trade Jones for Tiddlywinks,
eventually he could go off, because he still is Aaron Jones
and get there. So, I mean, if I'm saying buy low guys, I mean, Aaron Jones is a buy low. Najee Haris is still a buy low.
They're the same story.
Zeke is probably a sell high, but I'm not. If I own Zeke, unless I'm getting something really good, which you're not going to, you're going to get two buy low guys for your sell high guy. And you're both going to think you're getting a good deal, but in the end, you never really know what deal is really good.
I'm obviously doing the strategies of football for the Cowboys Eagles from the Sunday night game. That's what's coming out this week, guys. So get ready for that on Wednesday. The thing with the Cowboys offense that was very infuriating for me, as you're watching an eagle flying around your house right now, was
there's a light going something now.
There is at least 12 of the 60 or so plays that the Cowboys run that were a direct copy from what the Eagles ran in the same game, with one glaring exception. In almost all of them, the Eagles did it better. So I say that for two main reasons. A, I know most defensive lines do not have 4 studs in the middle that cannot be moved. The Eagles were basically saying, try to double team us. Fletcher Cox ain't moving. Hargrave ain't moving. Davis ain't moving. You ain't running on us. And Zeke still did get some stuff out. So to me, that is promising. What is discouraging for me is Pollard is also getting carries.
Well, here's the thing, though. This is what, going back to our statement about buy low, sell high, this is arguably Zeke's best game with two juicy matchups coming up on the schedule next. Detroit, Chicago. Then
those
comes
are juicy.
bye. Then comes Green Bay, which is also another decent matchup. Then comes Minnesota, which is also another decent matchup. Then comes the Giants. Then towards the end of the season, when you're looking to be in the playoffs, hopefully, he has Houston, Jacksonville, Philly, Tennessee. Right? So,
to me, that sounds, you probably got him in the third or fourth round, just ride him out.
That's exactly what I'm saying. But if you're trying to sell him high, it's a misnomer, because you really, unless somebody's willing to give you an incredible deal for like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Jonathan Taylor. I keep saying JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Jonathan Taylor tailback. If you're able to get a phenomenal player, and it's the same thing we said a couple weeks ago about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We were saying sell high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but nobody was buying high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the concept of it is definitely something that in this generation that we have now of constant information and constant creators that are creating content like us and other people, you can't really say that. You can't really say it's a buy low, sell high. You might be able to get them at a better value, but it's not like it's going to be incredible. Like, I'm trying to trade in my Yahoo league, and this is just an example. I don't have Aaron Jones in my Yahoo league, but I've been trying to get Tyler Lockett in my there's an owner in my Yahoo league that has Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And as part of this deal, I have offered up Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne. I have offered guys not one for one, but I'm saying, okay, this is what I'm willing to offer up. What can we get done? And they don't want to give up Lockett for cheap. They don't want to give up DK Metcalf for, even when you offer, like, say I put up Derrick Henry and, Dalton Schultz or something like that. I want to get my maximum value out of Henry because he's still performing really well, but I'm in need of more wide receiver position. So it's more of a position for position. Like, if you can give up, if you can give up Aaron Jones and you can trade him, plus like one of your bench guys for a guy that's going to help you every single week at the wide receiver position, that's the type of trade that I would make. I wouldn't be looking for like another, like if I'm trading Derrick Henry, I'd like to at least go down to like, I don't know, Kenneth Walker or like Ramondre Stevenson or somebody like that, maybe a little bit lower, and pick up another wide receiver at a value to fill out my team to make it a little bit better. But the buy low idea is just, it's not there. Because everybody wants.
Yeah, so to actually do the art of a fantasy trade, remember, in theory, you should know these people you are in your league with. Maybe have some obviously you have better relationships with some of them than others. But what I would say is you always want to work it from the way you do any type of business deal. Don't just do it with the numbers on a page. Start with it with like an actual conversation rather than just getting the alert on your phone.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what the trade is. Those types of conversations ends up getting better results and something actually going through, even if it's maybe not exactly what you wanted on paper. You're more likely to get something done if you're actually having conversations, especially in person.
That's 100% true. The issue with the fantasy trade, like I said earlier, is the FOMO, fear of missing out. Is that you
need to get over that as an owner.
Well, I'm just saying this is for.
No, I'm just telling you, like, that's what you
everybody.
need to do as a fantasy owner out there listening. You need to just not have that.
I'm not afraid of missing out on Clyde Edwards-Helaire if I got him at say 7th round, 8th round, and I flipped him for, at the time, a 1st rounder or a 2nd rounder. Like, if I was able to flip Clyde Edwards-Helaire Jerry Jeudy and somebody else for like Jonathan Taylor when Jonathan Taylor was struggling and then went down with an injury. That is a type of trade that, people are looking for. They're looking for.
Yeah, they would do that trade at the beginning of his injury. They're not going to do it now that the injury's over, because the pain of that trade is how long is he going to be out for. But now it's Taylor's back. I won't pay.
But I wouldn't necessarily call that like, so that's a decent trade because it helps out both parties, right? You get more talent, I get the best talent, blah, 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 blah. But what's happening now and what I see is that, this is just like a text stream between my buddy and I, who I'm trying to get. I said, out of your players, I'm interested in Lockett, Najee, and a couple other people. Mm-hmm. I said, these people interest me the most. I'm kind of meh on this guy. And this is after kind of a couple days of talking, and I still haven't heard back. Right. And he lost again.
Can't make people respond their texts.
Lost again this week. But this is the thing, is that your players are only worth what somebody's willing to give up for them. So there will always be owners that are out there that are willing to trade a bunch of something for something good, and that are willing to do that because their roster either needs to be filled out, more completed, because they're struggling at a lot of positions, and a lot of positions hasn't played out. But as one of the creators on TikTok said, you always want to maximize your starting roster. And there was a guy from like the Walter Picks 32 creator.
This is also a good week to do it because there's a lot of good high-end talent going on a bye. Sometimes you can pick someone off that's an upgrade at your position, but you eat it for a week. For instance, this week, Philly and Minnesota are going on a bye. So you're looking at Hurts, Jefferson, and Brown. If you get someone who's like on the fence, like feels like, oh, I'm only 2-4, I really need to win. And maybe you could turn something where like I'll give you Carr for Cousins, which clearly is an upgrade. But I've already eaten the bye week of Carr, but I get the better quarterback in the long run. If you could absorb the 1 week without a quarterback, that's the kind of opportunity that the bye week season gets you. And this is a huge bye week at that, given the fact that the Eagles and Minnesota both contribute to a lot of fantasy studs out there.
Exactly.
And Brown would be a great one to have. I got to tell you, I wish I had him. Hurts is playing phenomenal. If I had to rank it right now, Josh Allen's my league MVP, but Hurts is second. And I'd really draw a line there until you get to Mahomes at third, because Hurts is doing things that no other running quarterback can do, and that includes Lamar and Kyler. And he's also throwing the ball better than some of the names that we have out there, like Rodgers and Brady. And Hurts, to me, in a dynasty league, keeper league, I'd have him rated higher than Lamar because he doesn't get hit the way Lamar does. I'd have him rated higher than Kyler Murray. Aside from that, Call of Duty's coming out this year. You also have the fact that he actually watches film and cares. That team is Hurts' team. Arizona Cardinals is not Kyler Murray's team. Kyler Murray is just on the Arizona Cardinals. And that, to me, of when I look at the three running quarterbacks, if you will, Hurts is by far ahead of them. And I think Hurts, if anyone in the NFL has a chance to be Josh Allen, granted he's 100 pounds lighter than him. Hurts is the only one with a comparable skill set, I would say, to him. Not the body type, definitely not the body type, but the ability to be strong, take hits, not be feared, and put the ball essentially wherever. And the one thing I loved about the Philly offense, breaking it down last week, very little wide receiver screens, very few. They recognize a very simple fact. When you're standing under center in the NFL and you throw the ball to the sidelines, that's roughly a 25-yard throw in terms of quarterback putting the ball in the air.
Right.
Philly basically says, if we're throwing the ball 25 yards, we're throwing it downfield. And guess what? It really works out. And they have three very different skill set receivers out there. A.J. Brown is basically a jack of all trades. He does them all very well. Smith is a very good downfield guy, and Goddard is a good underneath guy. So you got essentially the three layers going at any point. And because they run the ball so well, you get so much single coverage on AJ Brown, who he's going to win that all day, every day. So all this to say is, if you're playing someone who's got AJ Brown and they're in a must-win situation, they need to win this game, try it, man. Like it can be one of these things that you can exploit people in their fears. And
Right.
normally the best trades come from people living in their fears. And
Yeah,
that's one of the things with bye weeks.
And those fears, the fear of missing out is one of those. The fear of going.
The fear of going 1-5 is real.
Oh, I mean, I've been there. I mean, I lost again this week. I'm 2 and what is it? 2 and
4.
2 and 4, yeah, in my Yahoo league. In our league, I won, so I'm doing okay. But I'm 2 and 4. I'm in 8th place out of 12. The leader is 6 and 0, and then we have 2 5 and 1s, and then the next teams up are just 3 and 3 as well. So I mean, it's not like I withstood my bye week. If for some reason I can't get a win this week, then it's going to be really rough. But it's like, there are some players, and one of these players that we need to talk about before we get to like Aaron Rodgers and other things that are happening around the league is DJ Moore. So DJ Moore, I feel, his talent is being wasted right now on Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Hey, when are we getting Dave back on, by the way?
Oh, we have to. We'll talk to him. We'll see when he wants to come back. DJ Moore is being wasted. I don't know what's happening with him. I don't know if there's something happening with him and the team.
They all hate each other. That part's really clear.
They
got kicked.
This is a player.
Anderson off the sidelines.
This is a player. Well, they trade. Oh, Robbie Anderson got traded to Arizona. That's the other wide receiver that.
He got traded today.
He got traded yesterday.
For what?
I don't know. So like I said, Rondale Moore is still on waivers. Robbie Anderson is still on waivers. You could probably
I'd take Robbie Anderson over Moore.
You could probably pick both of them up. They're basically the same player in my mind.
Yeah, but if you traded for someone, you're going to use them.
Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah, I mean, who gives away draft capital and doesn't use them?
Seattle was talking about trading for Cam Akers, but Kenneth Walker is the guy I'm starting in Seattle. So I mean,
Seattle's not going to take Cam Akers. I think they're just going to piss off the Rams.
There's been rumors of saying that Pete Carroll wants to go out and get Cam Akers. So
Pete Carroll just wants to have the press conference tomorrow that says, "I hate Cam Akers."
The ultimate buy low guys are guys that aren't startable right now. These are guys.
The ones that are on buys.
No. I'm saying the ultimate buy low players are players with an elite ceiling of talent, but have terrible situations right now. So
like you're talking about like
I'm talking specifically about Cam Akers
and
DJ Moore. These are two guys that you will be wasting a roster space on for the short term. However, if they happen to get traded for any reason, and I don't see DJ Moore getting traded now that Robbie Anderson got traded.
Oh, I don't know. I think they could do a complete and utter wholesale fire.
If they do that and he gets a better situation, you now have an elite level player. It's the same type of thing where people were willing to sit on DeAndre Hopkins on a suspension, taking up a bench spot
for the
same reason. So if you feel like you can offer a person, and
I'm also sitting on Cam Akers for the record too, for the exact same reason.
I
fully believe in the strategy.
And save them and be like, okay, I see that you need a running back. Here's a running back that is not doing well, Chase Edmonds. I will trade you Chase Edmonds.
Is St. Brown still hurt?
He's
Detroit?
healthy again, I think.
Okay.
I think he's healthy again. So you can't
miss an opportunity on that.
The missed opportunity. I mean, most people that own
this is time if you're in a dynasty league to go steal Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because if you know he's out for 6 weeks, you can float him, like, hey, I got a guy. He doesn't he's not the greatest, but at least you can use him for the rest of the season. His name's Julio Jones.
In Dynasty, if you're sitting on a Hollywood Brown and the other guy has some other elite level talent players, which
no, I'm not saying elite level. I'm saying I got Julio who can get you through the 6 weeks and get you in the playoffs.
Julio can't though. That's the problem. He can't.
Yeah, that might be true. Julio might have just been, I got sold a box of bag goods thinking he was going to play, and he really didn't do anything.
But that's the piece. It's like the ultimate buy low guys are guys that currently really aren't sniffing a starting lineup, but in a couple of weeks when you're looking to be cooking, hopefully. And this is the issue, is that if I'm at 6-0 or I'm 5-1, I'm probably looking at the owner of DJ Moore sitting all the way at the back of the pack and going, you know what? I will flip you one of my bench guys for DJ Moore. But if I'm 2-3 or if I'm 2-4 or 3-3, depending on my league setup and how many people are in front of me, I probably can't go after a guy like DJ Moore because I probably don't have the players that will get me something like that. And that's the issue with the trade. Is like, you can
this is how the rich keep getting richer.
The rich keep getting richer. If you're at a good point in your league, you can totally maximize it and just go bang, 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 empty your bench and just go talent, 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 talent. If you're at the bottom and you're trying to get better, you're going to have to give up a lot more, which will then really submarine your team if somebody gets hurt. Because I'm sure people went out there a couple weeks ago and were probably like, okay, I'll trade for Hollywood Brown because Hollywood Brown is getting this immense amount of targets. I'll give up Cam Akers and a player and then another bench player or something like that for Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown gets hurt. And this is the same thing that happened to me last year, is that I give up my 2 elite players for Derrick Henry and a couple other players that will fill out the rest of my roster and give me points every week. Well, those guys ended up getting hurt, couldn't get any points. Derrick Henry got hurt, couldn't get any points. I still almost made the playoffs, but it was a struggle. You had to hoof it out a little bit more. Sure. So like, if I'm a player sitting at 2-3, 1-5, I'm not yet ready to sell all my talent because I might just be a couple pieces away, a couple, missed snaps away or something from getting a couple more wins. And so trades are definitely,
like I look at this setup I had here, it was risky, but I ultimately have, if you said to someone before the season started, this is what your starting lineup is going to be in week 7, Mahomes, Najee, Aaron Jones, Jamar Chase, Godwin, Hopkins. That team would have scored the most points of all time.
I would have said you were probably 6-0.
Yeah. But you look at it, Chase is obviously my keeper. He's the one that I got way cheaper than I should have. Sometimes it's good to buy on a rookie. But Aaron Jones and Najee have been, to me, I mean, I'm riding it, so I'm feeling the pain. Just gigantic disappointments. And even ESPN has it. Like, you know how ESPN projects the points you're going to score. At the beginning of the year, they're projected to put up 20 each. This week, they're barely in the 13s. It's like, this is getting gross. But I feel that, we're at a spot in the season where it's all about what does the next phase look like. And there's some teams that I'm definitely saying I want to avoid like crazy. Obviously, Carolina is a dumpster fire. But there's also some teams I want to play. I also think Washington is on the verge of being a dumpster fire. They started off real hot, but they aren't able to sustain it. And I think they're in trouble.
So I think I have like a curse or something upon me when it comes to naming fantasy players that I really like.
Oh, yeah, dude. It's like as soon as you said Wentz, game was over.
Like when I said if I have Lamar, like Lamar has been going downward.
Yeah, he has been. He's also making horrible life decisions.
We weren't wrong about that, but I mean, with Carson Wentz getting hurt, and then his like games leading up to that getting hurt, like I still think you would have been in a good position if you would have traded Lamar Jackson for Derrick Henry and Carson Wentz and somebody else. I still think you would have probably been in a good position for that because you probably would have prepared with Wentz and you probably would have went out there and got Marcus Mariota and somebody else or somebody else.
That's getting a lot of extra work.
No. I'm saying if you traded away Lamar Jackson, your second quarterback, you might not have had one. And so you probably went out there when Carson Wentz started playing really, really bad. You probably went out and got Marcus Mariota or somebody else. But I'm still saying that trade would probably still work, but I'm just so disappointed with how hot Washington started, and we all knew it was going to come, but it should have lasted a couple more weeks.
It should have, and I'm gonna have to break down Washington to see what they were doing that was so obvious it's not working anymore.
It's just so disappointing. But when it comes to, you can't predict injuries, and you always want to be prepared for injuries. But now's the time of the year that if you think you have talent on your bench, trade it away.
Yeah, and this is also the time of the year we want to look at another feature that I talked about earlier in the season about how offenses were just behind in the first month of September, and now they're starting to catch up. You can't just live on raw talent on defense. The same is also true as if you have a very complicated defense scheme, you can start implementing that and taking it over, even if you're less talented. I cite the Patriots on this, unfortunately. That scheme is in effect, and Cleveland
hey, dude, I told you they were weird a couple of weeks ago. You didn't.
They were, and they're weird, but they're pointed up. And
really
that's true with New England. New England's pointed up, and I hate saying that sentence. But conversely, the teams that were living on athleticism rather than scheme are starting to get exposed. Primarily, case in point, is the Jacksonville defense. The Jacksonville defense has the potential to get you some sacks, but they're starting to regress back to the first pick overall Jaguars. That raw talent is better than it was last year just because they have a real coach, but it still's got a long ways to go. And yeah, you can win 2 out of 3 in week 1, the first 3 weeks when you got just so much raw talent, but scheme is starting to come into effect. And coming into this week, the Colts were the least talent, they were the least effective offense, and you took away their best weapon, and they still dropped on the 30s on you. So Jacksonville's a team I'd be concerned about. But the number one team I want to be concerned about, because they have the most overrated player in football by far, and I want you to pull up a stat line and back this one up for me here.
Okay.
Give me the stat line of Myles Garrett.
Down by the Cleveland Browns.
The Cleveland Browns are the worst defense in football from here on moving forward. Detroit got torched early, and it'll take a while for their stats to match as bad as Detroit's. Myles Garrett is incredibly overrated, and he has no depth to his game. And everyone knows Cleveland has only one member in their secondary. So as long as you have a guy that Ward is not covering, that defense is exposable. Can run on them all day. They made Zappy competent. And I got to say this again. He is not a competent quarterback.
Their run defense in yards allowed is the 3rd worst.
They're a horrible defense.
Passing wise, they're about in the middle of the league.
Yeah, part of that is because why pass on them though? So you're not putting up the yards.
Well, that's what I look at when I look at the worst run defenses, and those worst run defenses are Cleveland, Chicago, Green Bay, the Giants, New Orleans.
New Orleans is the surprising one on that list to me. Houston, I have an answer for why all the other ones are there.
They're not the worst, but they're
down there. So Green Bay's makes sense to me. Green Bay's makes sense because
Houston,
Chargers, and Seattle. Yeah, Houston's going to also revert to being bad if they haven't. They're going to be worse than the version of bad that's in everyone else's head.
So, like when I look at Houston, though,
I'm telling you, them and Cleveland are in a race for the first pick right now, even if no one sees it. That's what's happening.
No, they are, but Houston has this kind of. Let me spell it correctly first, so I can kind of pull it up. Houston is in the same situation, I think, that the some teams are in, where they got off to, like, they have that tie, right, with
they have a win
the Colts. They lost to the Broncos. The Broncos
should beat the Broncos.
The Broncos offense is terrible. I would sell as much as I could of the Broncos offense if anybody was buying, but nobody's buying, so unfortunately you have to keep them.
You get some name recognition for like Sutton or Judy.
They lost to the Bears by 3. They lost to the Chargers by 10, and they beat the Jaguars by 7 or so. They have not scored. I mean, they scored 24 points that game, but they scored 20, 6, 29, 20, 24, 13. So
it's a Lovie Smith team. It looks just like one.
as we look at the Texans going into the rest of the season here, they play the Raiders, they play the Titans, they play the Eagles, the Giants, the Commanders, the Dolphins, the Browns, Cowboys, Chiefs, Titans, Jaguars, Colts. I still feel like they'll probably get a couple more wins out of those games, but their pass defense looks better than
I think just because Lovie Smith's their coach,
nobody has to pass against them because they can run all over them.
Well, that's the thing. So when you went to that list before about how Cleveland's horrible at it, about Houston's terrible, Chicago's terrible, that's because why throw when we can it's safer to run the ball successfully. The teams that were on there being the Saints and the Packers, the reason, in my opinion, why they're not good against the run is they were built to be pass defense teams, thinking that when the core of these defenses were built, their offense was going to put up 28 a game. And
Green Bay,
Aaron Rodgers is hurting the Green Bay defense.
Green Bay. So let's see the correlation here. Green Bay, on average, so on the whole year, they've allowed 1,081 passing yards. Okay.
Yeah, and the correlation to look for is bottom defenses and their points.
New Orleans is secretly
as an
bad.
Offense.
New Orleans is secretly bad.
New Orleans, well, we're interviewing guys from New Orleans. I'm kind of getting that feeling too. And actually, with Brady being hurt, that entire division has just gotten a big old blah put across it. And is it a little crazy or soon to think that we might have 3 teams going 7-10 and weird tiebreakers gets Atlanta in?
No, I'm actually thinking at this point in time in the year that you're going to see 3 NFC East teams in the playoffs.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's really hard to get 3 in.
And you are.
Although that being said, all of them are. I mean, the Dallas is 1 with Cooper Rush, and they're the ones with 2 losses in that division. The Eagles are the best team in the NFC without a doubt, so they're in. And 5, it's hard not to make the playoffs when you're 5-1 in the Giants' defense. I mean, because if they even just go 500 the rest of the way, there's 10 games left. That ends up putting them 10-7, and 10-7 probably gets you in. And you got to figure if you start 5-1, it is likely that you don't play worse than 500 from that point on. Which really then turns some things around here.
Yeah.
Because then now you got teams like the Packers who are at 500 fighting with the NFC West for the other spot here. Because I don't think we're getting 2 out of the South. I think that has to be accepted that you're either getting the Saints or Tampa. You're Saints, not getting both.
Atlanta, Tampa, and Carolina.
I don't think Atlanta can really do it. I mean, I like how they're running the ball and all that.
I mean, right now, Atlanta is sitting at 3-3 or something like that.
Yeah, the whole base of the whole conference is.
They're finding ways to disappoint but also win at the same time. And while New Orleans is just, who really honestly knows what's going to happen for New Orleans, because with the quarterback situation as it is, Jameis Winston's coming back potentially.
That's not official whether he's playing Thursday or not.
Andy Dalton has been okay, but they've had a lot of injuries in the wide receiver room. So
they sure have.
That's a team that once those receivers come back, are probably going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get churning again. So if they all decide to come back the same week, if they're all healthy the same week, what I see happening is that after 2 or 3 weeks time, you could potentially start seeing some momentum being built by that team. And maybe the offense will start pulling out more points to get them wins. But with the defense, with Marcus May going down earlier in the year, I don't know what his timetable is to come back. But that defense has always been a little shaky to me. Just watching their games, I've never actually liked the New Orleans defense. They've always blown games.
You know what the
And
New Orleans this
one of
year's
the biggest games that they've ever blown was when I can't even remember his name. I don't even remember his name, but he's a meme now where he gave up that play to the Minnesota wide receiver. I think it was Stephon Diggs.
It was Diggs.
And just like Diggs is just like, oh yeah, I got this, and then just trots down the field. I'm like, how does that happen? I think New Orleans is secretly bad.
Well, New Orleans this year
they might
is
be
the Steelers
opportunistic.
last year.
Yeah, they might be opportunistic, but I
They
don't
are.
think
Almost all their offense comes in the fourth quarter.
I don't think that New Orleans defense is a good defense. So when I'm looking at like who I'm going to start in the week, yeah, I'm thinking about, okay, who are my starters playing against on defense, but also, you know, you're thinking about your elite talent level. These are all decisions that you're making. And unfortunately, like, you know, in terms of like what's going to happen in the NFC South, I still think it's going to be Tampa, because I still think Tampa has the most talent with the better opportunities because they've come back first healthy.
Yeah.
If New Orleans,
Atlanta's a nice little thing here, but I don't see them.
Atlanta might be able to, but Kyle Pitts, who knows?
No, I don't think Atlanta really is the real deal. And the Tampa thing with Brady is very concerning. And I think we're at the verge right now of finding out whether he's a name or whether he still has something.
And this goes back to what
I just don't think he does. That's why I'm leaning for the crab legs, baby.
Aaron Rodgers a couple of weeks ago is over a span of a couple of weeks, you're going to see what your team's mettle is, what your team is going to be able to come back. Because Tampa lost to the Steelers, they're going to be probably more motivated to come back next week and probably win that game. They probably win that game in a landslide.
Oh yeah, because there's a very good chance they just saw the Steelers got destroyed by Buffalo. Let's take it easy, and just that's human nature. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that.
But when it comes to like, okay, what am I looking at, like, in terms of like output in the future, like going to Aaron Rodgers now. Aaron Rodgers.
We should have a little meme for Aaron Rodgers and Bob time.
I feel like I have to start him against Washington.
No.
Washington's defense.
Dude, how many times are you going to get bit by this?
Well, here's what I'm saying. Okay. There are only, and I said this in a previous show, I said I'd give Aaron Rodgers a couple of weeks.
Yeah, he had to average 3 touchdowns a week. How many did he throw last week?
1, I think.
That's what I thought. That's an average of 3.
I was right about that. He sucks. But
you're still going to play him though.
But Washington's defense is bad. I still want to play him against the Bears, and I still want to play him against Detroit. Right? I told you. No. I told you a couple weeks ago that the Jets' defense is actually not that bad. And the Jets are not that bad. And
are the Jets an argument to the team that has to have a system in place, and now Saleh has, we're at this point where systems start mattering? Like, are the Jets actually like well coached now, and like we have to start paying attention to Saleh?
I think,
or are they like Indianapolis, where they just got a middle of the road coach, and because it's not a dumpster fire like the Jets are used to, it looks good?
I don't know how to answer that question because I don't watch enough Jets.
Oh, we got Jets guy coming up in 2 weeks, by the way, so we can ask him.
I don't watch enough Jets to say that specifically it could go one way or another. But what I do see is that they have 2 capable running backs who are productive. They have an offensive line which is moving players off the ball, letting the talent make plays. They have a collection of wide receivers who, while not any one of them is supremely talented, you still have to respect the skills of all of them. They have a gadget player in Braxton Berrios. They have a quarterback who, while might not be the most talented quarterback out there in the league,
far from it,
is definitely more talented than Joe Flacco. and can move the ball. They're moving the ball. And when you move the ball, good things can happen, especially when you move it in a positive direction.
Oh, yeah.
Their defense is capable of allowing a lot of points, right? They can, I mean, I don't, let me look up, maybe you can look it up if I can't find it fast enough. The Jets like points allowed while I look up the stats in terms of how much passing yards they've given up. So the Jets have given up 1,341 passing yards, which is like around the middle of the pack. But equally, they've had 7 interceptions to 8 touchdowns given up. Okay.
And they have allowed 128 points. And they have
Which where at in the league is that?
Now I gotta do deep stuff here, Bob.
And their defense,
it's definitely in the middle of the AFC.
And their defense, in terms of yards giving up, is around the middle of the pack as well, where they've only given up 4 touchdowns. So
yeah, I mean, let's face it here. The Jets are one of 3 teams that are over, or one of 4 teams that are over 500 in the AFC.
But do I think they're playing out of their talent? No, I don't. Do I think they're playing out of pocket? No, I don't. I think they're an average, middle-of-the-road team who has taken the opportunities given to them to win. And they've turned those games into wins.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike, which was, like you said, a little bit like what the Steelers did last year, where they had the opportunities to win and they took the wins. Mm-hmm. They're a team that, if Buffalo wasn't as good as Buffalo is, would probably be in the conversation of the best team in that division. Miami is fallen off. I don't think Miami is good.
They're not.
I didn't think they were good at the beginning of the season either. We did talk about their coach a lot. But the Jets are just a team that a lot of people trust them. Now, do I want the fantasy players on those teams? Yeah, probably I'd take a couple of them. I'm not going to name the ones I would take because I don't want to jinx it. But if you play fantasy, you know who, and you're watching this, you obviously play fantasy, so you know who the guys are.
Hey, Bob, just one theoretical
I don't think they're full schooled. That's what I'm saying.
I got that. As we're ending here on big picture, the Dolphins are 3-3, the Patriots are 3-3, and the Steelers are 2-4. If you had to say at the end of the season, and I'll throw in Tennessee too. They're 3-2 right now. If you had to rank those teams based upon the records at the end of the season, where do you think they end up?
Patriots number 1.
And which one's in last?
Probably Tennessee or the Steelers. And
see, I'd have Miami in hard last. I think they're about to fall off a cliff.
I feel that.
I think there's a very good chance that TJ breaks him. Literally breaks Tua. He's a slow processor.
If Tua comes back, then you have the talent aspect back in the game room there. That you have to respect Tua in a way that you don't have to respect Teddy Bridgewater, in a way that you don't have
Bridgewater's better quarterback than Tua, dude.
Thompson. I feel like they're the same quarterback, just in a different timeline.
That might be an accurate observation.
So, when I look at the Dolphins, do I think that they're better than the teams that we said? I probably think they're a little bit better than the Steelers right now. If Kenny Pickett can come back from the concussion, I think that the Steelers have a better offense with Kenny Pickett.
But he's not playing this week, though.
Right.
Concussion now takes you out a week. That's like the new role.
But the Steelers have so much to get together, and a lot of that, like we keep saying, is coaching, and a lot of that is players making mistakes, and a lot of that is talent too, where you might not be putting the ball where the wide receiver can make a position and make a cut. You're not giving the wide receivers space that they need to make plays. So a lot of your plays are only maybe 10 yards, 11 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards, 6 yards. The Steelers have a lot to figure out, and that's the that's the thing that I'm worried about there with the Steelers. The team that I'm not worried about is the Patriots, and like I said, this could be a giant jinx to the Patriots.
Hope it is.
Which we're not opposed to jinxing the Patriots, but they have a good defense. I mean, at this point in time, they're stopping offenses that are talented. They're stopping offenses with
is Cleveland that talented on offense?
I do think that when we look at the teams that they've played, that these are teams that can definitely score points. And they've pretty much not allowed them to do that. And the teams, and here's the other thing to say about it, though, is the teams that weren't supposed to score points also didn't score points.
Yeah.
When they played the Steelers, they locked them out.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's what Tampa couldn't. Tampa didn't do that. And so, like, I know it's like a weird correlation, but coaching matters.
Oh, yeah.
Players matter, but good coaching can sometimes overstep and make up for a deficiency in talent.
Yeah, exactly. Tomlin, I think Tomlin deserves credit for that Steelers win immensely for that. Because really at the end of the day, I believe a Hall of Fame coaching will trump if you have less talent. Because watching that Seattle-Arizona game, Seattle had less talent on the field than the Arizona Cardinals. Mm-hmm. Seattle was never in doubt in that game. No. Ever. And it is something that I believe with. And I do think it's time to invite Buffalo into you're probably a Hall of Fame coach circle. Yeah, I think there's at any given point 5 or 6 of them in the league. And yes, there's more of them in the AFC than the NFC. But I do think it's very evident. It's Belichick, it's Carroll, Reed, Buffalo, us, and Baltimore. And I would say that those are your 6 best coaches in the NFL.
I'm just gonna lay this out for you right now. So
LaFleur's probably right on that doorstep.
Tom Brady left the New England Patriots in 2000 and at the end of the 2019 season, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since that point in time, New England went 7-9, 10-7, 3-3 as of this season. So when I see that, and the quarterbacks that I'm looking on that roster are Mac Jones, Cam Newton, Zappy, and players like Jacoby Myers, who even stepped in to make some plays. Brian
that was
Hoyer,
Wildcat stuff, though.
Jarrett Stidham,
Stidham, that's the guy.
I'm looking at all of that, and even with that collection of players, they had 7 wins.
Well, it's not a good collection of players.
The Carolina Panthers have what people
have
would say,
worse collection of players and less draft picks.
But they have highly drafted players as their quarterbacks that haven't turned out. And so when I see the Patriots, the reason I would rank them number 1, which probably isn't going to happen because now I said it, is that coaching, Hall of Fame coaching, same with Buffalo. Buffalo's coach is probably going to be a Hall of Famer at the end of his career. Hall of Fame coaching can definitely make up for deficits at players. Like Buffalo doesn't have a run game. It has zero proficiency in the run game, but yet they play to what the strengths of their players are, and they make their players better. And that's something that Carolina, Matt Rule, couldn't do. Mm-mm. That's something that the guy who's currently coaching the Broncos can't do.
Hackett. He cannot hack it.
These are things. This is why Sean Payton is considered a really good coach, because he's able to take guys that you probably, other than Drew Brees, he turned and like Kamara, he turned him into Colston. Right? Like no, but Marquise Colston was like from the Citadel or something like that. I don't even remember where he went to school at.
He was like a 6th-round draft pick or something.
He was on. I don't even think he was drafted, and he turned him into like a fantasy football legend. So
he was.
Am I taking players from fantasy wise from the Patriots? Probably not, unless it's Ramondre Stevenson. But are those players worth starting on a bye? Absolutely.
Dude, Parker's starting to turn on. It's getting a little weird.
Who is?
Parker.
I mean, Devontae Parker, Jacoby Myers, all those guys, you can't trust them.
But no, you can't trust any Patriot on offense.
But you can trust Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Harris when they're healthy. They are productive players.
But they always lie about how healthy everyone is.
And that's the thing. The Patriots aren't what you want from fantasy guys. But if I'm taking a team to make the playoffs this year or to make a Super Bowl, other than those top tier contenders like the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, it's the Patriots. I mean, I hate to say it, it's gross, but with trash players, with players that you would find on the waiver wire, they're winning games, and the games that they're losing, and you might be able to. I can probably pull this up really fast before we decide to go off the air here. Is that they're sitting at, they beat the Detroit Lions. They beat the snot out of the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, they lost to the Packers in overtime.
Right.
They lost to the Ravens in what was just a
20-7
boat show. And they lost week 1 in Miami when they always lose to Miami.
They lost to the Ravens 37-26. They lost to the Packers in overtime. They beat the Lions and they beat the snot out of the Cleveland Browns. Now, that game,
and then they got the Bears, Jets, and Colts. This team is going to be 6-3.
Right. And then coming out of their bye week, the only loss, I like that game against the Jets. I would prefer that would be a primetime game because that would probably be, interesting. But I can see
2 primetime games. They got 3 actually.
Vikings. I could see a loss to the Bills, and another loss to the Bills, and a close game against the Bengals.
Yeah, unless that Bills game at the last game of the year doesn't matter to the Bills, then they're not going to. I think that Belichick can beat the backups of Buffalo. I think he beat the backups of any team.
But I think the coach in Buffalo, if it was a game that the Patriots needed to get in the playoffs, I think he would try to stop them from getting in the playoffs.
Or you're going to stop enough to play Josh Allen.
You got to play head games with that with Bill Belichick. And there's no, I mean, you can't skirt around that.
This is also the same team I watched stumble into the playoffs last year then implode. So to me, this is almost more of an indictment about the AFC than it is about, because that let's not kid ourselves. It's a great coach, but it's still a horrible roster. Bill Belichick, the GM, is a horrible GM.
Yes, agreed.
But I look at that schedule.
Coach,
they're not more talented than the Cardinals, but we both know they're going to beat the Cardinals. Like that. That's what you're saying. But in the playoffs, when you're playing other talented, good coaches, it doesn't work. This is why Belichick also has not won a playoff game without Brady.
Probably going to make the playoffs because
I think he is making
find a way to win those games. But usually when
he's got New Year's Day hosting Miami. That's going to be a disgusting game.
Yeah, but I guess this goes to say, in regards to also fantasy as well, is that a fantasy GM is going to be able to take the whole of their team, and even if the names don't sound good, they're going to try to make that work. They're going to play to the strengths of whatever else is on their team. So if my tight end position is the weakest position, but I'm not worried about maximizing that position because the only maximized players at the position would be Kelsey and Andrews, then I'm just going to stream whoever I think is the best player. I'm only going to carry one tight end at a time. And I'm going to try to trade everything else away for maximizing the talent at another position. And so for the Patriots and for some other teams in the league too, because a couple other coaches do this too, is that they're taking what their talent is, playing to the talent's strengths, and making that team a winning team. And that's the problem that I have with the Raiders. And we talked to Daryl about this, is that, you know, there are times that it looks like the Raiders are playing to their strengths, and then there are times where we don't know what we're not sure what the strengths are.
Their strengths are Jacobs and Adams.
But they're going back and forth. They're making adjustments. They're not playing a whole game. And this is what I said about the Packers too, is for the couple games of the Packers that I've watched this year, is that they don't really have an identity. They don't really know.
Well, the Packers have a bigger
what they
problem.
want to do.
We're not sure they have a strength.
Right? But even Dallas was winning with Cooper Rush. So
because Dallas knew what their strength was. His name's CeeDee Lamb.
Precisely. Coaches that know what they're doing can take
even ones that don't, and they just keep pressing the button. CeeDee Lamb plays. CeeDee Lamb plays.
Ineffective players and win games. And we sit here on the other side when we look at our DFS lineups, when we look at our fantasy lineups, we're like, huh? How did that happen? Like, how did I get
CeeDee is, you know what? If someone if I could offer Aaron Jones against CeeDee, those guys are on very different trajectories. CeeDee Lamb is about to explode, and his numbers don't look very good.
I have Aaron Jones, and you have CeeDee Lamb. Do you want Aaron Jones?
I'm not giving. I just said I'm not giving. I want CeeDee. I don't want to give him away.
Yeah, but you were willing to give him up week 2 as soon as Cooper Rush came in, though.
I was at that point. But I just dealt with all the pain of Cooper Rush. That is over now.
That's a FOMO moment. That if you would have made that decision.
Well, no, had you been willing to deal with the pain, I would have been here now eating the Aaron Jones "I Hate My Life" song. Well, you're about to run away with all the points that are going to be CeeDee Lamb as what probably would be your third receiver. Because if you're doing a trade like that, CeeDee Lamb is not going to be your number 1 receiver. You already would have drafted someone.
Yeah, well, so I would be putting Cortland Sutton on the bench.
Well, that's an upgrade, obviously.
An upgrade.
On that note, we thank everyone for watching.
On that note, hold on, before we do this.
All right.
Everybody out there, if you watched that Monday night game yesterday, I'm sorry for you because I did the same thing. But I do want to comment on how bad Denver's offensive line is. I think that Joe will be doing a strategies of football probably in the coming weeks and featuring.
Oh, you can watch the one where I did against the Raiders in Denver. It's the same bad offensive
featuring
line.
That sack by Tranquil when he blew up Russell Wilson like 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage in the fourth quarter. It was absolutely disgusting. If you are in an IDP league and you are playing the Denver Broncos, go out and get the best defensive player from that team.
Whoever lines up over their tackle. Yeah.
And start them, because that line, it could be worse than Green Bay's. It could be worse than Tampa's. It could be worse than the Steelers. I don't know, but I am just positing that
Baltimore's a very bad off. Or this could be worse than Baltimore's too. But
Aaron Rodgers still sucks too, so
On that note, we got some good games coming up here this week. Strategy of football coming out on Wednesday. That is going to be the Eagles and the Cowboys. We'll be with you here on Friday for our DFS show. We'll see you guys then.